three things
Yeah.
which ordinary citizens can do, which me, my camera person, my producer, everybody can do despite having a really crazy life.
Yeah.
Where I'm not somebody who can spend hours in the gym. I'm not someone who can dedicate their lives into looking a particular way. I'm also not a sports star, so I don't have a battery of people taking care of what I eat, how much I sleep and all of that.
Yeah.
Are there three easy ways
100%.
in which I can ensure that I'm giving back to my body?
That's nutrition, your movement, which activity, exercise, and managing your sleep and stress.
Pharma invention, the industry at least says that GLP-1 is a medical drug. It's changing lifestyle, it's changing people, etc. I have some reservations on the depth of data that we have on GLP-1, but would you say that GLP-1 solves this problem a little bit?
If someone is clinically obese, then it's a net positive for them. But otherwise, you should know that research points that there are a lot of shortcomings of GLP-1. There was research that was done which found that 40% of the weight that is lost through GLP-1 is actually the muscle mass that is lost, right? So let's take an example. If you lose 10 kgs having Ozempic or whatever GLP-1 medicine that you take, out of the 10 kg, 4 kg is going to be the muscle loss. You don't want muscle loss.
Hello and welcome. This is Booked, and today the book that we are talking about is Karan Sarin's Sick Nation: Inside India's Lifestyle Disease Epidemic and How to Fix It. Now, Karan Sarin, thank you so much for being here with us, discussing your book with us. I think fair to say that we are in times where India has never been more health obsessed. There is an entire generation which is sometimes devoting too much time to healthcare, but also post-pandemic, an entire crop of people who've become really obsessed with taking care of themselves. And health has redefined in several ways as well. But, before we deep dive into it, I want to get your own understanding of how do you perceive health and what got you into writing the book?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, first of all. Look, before I talk about my personal journey, I want to say that India is facing its worst metabolic epidemic as of now. We are already the diabetes capital of the world. By 2050, if nothing is done, we will have 450 million obese people in India. 27% of deaths, all deaths that happen in India today happen because of a cardiovascular disease. 1 in 3 Indian has a fatty liver disease. And we, in another 20 years, 20% of our population will be above 60. We are not just facing a diabetes crisis, we are actually facing a Alzheimer or a dementia crisis too. So
because it's all sort of related.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. And so we're at the, if nothing is done, this epidemic is only going to get more severe, more worse. And that's exactly the reason that I wrote Sick Nation, because I wanted to bring this to light. Unfortunately, our medical system, it is designed to treat diseases.
Correct.
It's not designed to prevent diseases. And I know it's hard to change the system. So that's why I like to say that, we need to be the CEO of our own health. So we need to be proactive about our health. And Sick Nation is just the wake-up call for people to be more proactive about their health.
Right. I love what you said, and this is truly the definition of health today. We go to a doctor when the house is already on fire. I think what we're talking about now is how to prevent the house from getting on fire and how do we ensure that happens. But health is complicated.
Right.
Health knowledge even worse.
Right.
A lot of even doctors don't understand the basic nuance. They know how to treat it. They might not know how to sort of ensure, like they said, there's no health insurance or health disease prevention plan, if one can call it that. So what, according to you, actually gets us into that space? What are the basic principles, if you can tell us?
Yeah. Look, I don't blame them. Our medical system or our medical schools actually teach doctors or train doctors in very neat compartments. You are trained in a certain specialization. Then if you look at our diagnostic system, it is looking for late stage markers. By the time your blood sugar levels go up, you are already 10, 15 years behind. The damage has already occurred.
Correct.
And somehow, for some reason, we are obsessed with with uh, with tracking markers which are late stage markers. And then, when we get sick, if you have a heart disease, you go to a cardiologist. If you have a fatty liver, you go to a hepatologist. If you have diabetes, you will go to a diabetologist. Then if you have, Alzheimer or anything related brain, then you go to a neurologist. So we go to different doctors, even though the underlying mechanism for all these metabolic disorders is same. We never address the root cause, and we try to solve each problem individually. And then lastly, how we treat these diseases is through medicine. And doctors will tell you that diseases like diabetes are not reversible. Well, of course, they're not reversible if you treat them with medicines, because medicines, all they do is they mask the symptoms, and they're pretty good at that. If you really want to address the root cause, then you can only do that with lifestyle changes. And that's hard. And that's what most doctors are either not taught. If you look at the education that they go through, nutrition is never the part of their
Correct.
education, right? And if you have to, or exercise physiology for that matter. So how are you going to address the issue if you are not going to address the lifestyle and only give medicines? Medicines only solve the symptoms and not the root cause.
I've often felt that in India, the way doctors look at medicine, and we have some fantastic doctors, not to take away from
course.
that, from across the globe, really. Indian doctors have really proved their merit. They come out strong. They know how to deal with complicated issues. But I think where we falter is that we get down to treating, and we are so good at making people live longer or survive longer, but not ensuring that it's the best of health. Lifespan versus health span, that whole debate that's going on. Which brings me to what you've mentioned in your book about this silent epidemic.
Right.
It's the third chapter, which goes on to talk about several paradoxes, thin fat being one of them. Tell us a
Right.
little bit more about that.
Yeah, of course. Before I address that, I just want to mention, who better than me to actually talk about this? My father, he had a cardiac arrest 3 years ago in 2022. Doctors did a brilliant job, and they were able to revive him from the cardiac arrest. Unfortunately, he developed a hypoxic brain injury right after that because of the blood supply that was because of his cardiac arrest. The blood supply was restricted to his brain, and he suffered brain damage because of that. 1.5 years later, unfortunate guy, he actually had a bleeding in his hemorrhage in his brain. We took him to the hospital. Doctors again did a brilliant job, and he came out of that as well. 2 months back, he actually had a stroke in his brain. So poor guy has suffered 3 brain injuries in the span of 3 years. And by the way, doctors have done a brilliant job of saving him every single time. But for the last 3 years, he's on a bed. He can't move. He can't even talk, right? So what's the point of elongating that lifespan when it doesn't have
That's
improved
what I
health
meant
in it?
when I said that they elongate life, they don't improve life.
Exactly. And look, I'm extremely thankful for the doctors. They do a brilliant job, and I don't blame them at all. I think, my father is alive today because of the great job that these doctors do. But like I said in the beginning, they are trained to treat a disease, not to prevent a disease. And to coming back to your question, genetics play a big role. But I like to say that genes load the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. So you can't shift the entire blame on genes. But I will still talk about that because I think we Indians are predisposed, our genes are predisposed to have these metabolic disorders. And it's unfortunately because of our past. We tend to have a thrifty genome type. There are multiple different terms to describe this. Some call it Asian Indian paradox, Indian thin fat phenotype. But in essence, they all say the same thing. What that is that our past, and especially during the colonial times, when British ruled us for 190 years, that was from 1754 till like 1947, we faced 31 famines. That's an average of 1 famine every 6 years. Before British rule, we used to get famines once in 50 years or 100 years. So this was really abnormal for us to go through a period of 190 years where we had a famine every 6 years. And by the way, these were not because of any natural calamities. These were completely policy driven. British, they prioritized cash crops over the daily staples. They would incentivize, or they would push farmers to actually grow sugar and opium instead of wheat and rice, which is daily
Yeah.
staple, and then they would want to export this instead of local consumption, which led to this situation. Now our bodies, they had to adapt to this to survive, and one adaptation that we went through was that we became really, really, really good at hoarding fat. Because fat is the energy source that is going to get through when the next famine comes. So, and these are called epigenetic changes, and they're very well documented in the research. I've mentioned that in the book. I've mentioned various studies that point this. And these epigenetic changes, they are passed on from generation to generation. There's a study in the book that I've cited which has a clear evidence. There was a famine in China in 1954 or something, where the research was done across 3 different generations, and they found that they started with mothers who were expecting, during that famine time, and they went through extreme starvation, and then they looked at the children that were born out of those mothers, and then they looked at the grandchildren as well, and what they found that this thrifty genome was passed on, after one generation to the other. So,
Wow.
and by the way, in India, the last famine we had was in 1957 or so, so it's not that old. So our genes have adapted.
So are you saying that we still carry the gene?
100%. We have. There's a research that was done by Dr. Chitranjan Yajanik, maybe I don't remember the exact time frame. It's cited in the book, where he's a very well accomplished doctor. He's among the world's top 2% researchers. He's the director of diabetes unit at KM Hospital in Pune. He studied the body mass of the newborn children in India. What he found was that the newborn children in India, as compared to Caucasian or European or Western children, tend to have a higher fat mass at birth. They have a lower muscle mass, and the fat that they have is mostly around the visceral area. Now these are newborn children, so we are born with this. I like to say, and that's what I mentioned in my book, we are born for scarcity, but we are living in abundance, and that is what causes this dissonance, and that's why we find ourselves, in this metabolic epidemic, because our bodies, they were designed for scarcity, but now we are living in abundance, where most doctors tell us to eat 6 small meals in a day. We can, order food in 10 minutes, and the energy is available around us all the time, and so we find ourselves in the age of abundance, even though our bodies were meant for scarcity.
This is fascinating. It also tells you how beautiful the human body is.
Absolutely.
And how beautiful evolution is. But what you're saying gets me to think. I often thought that we are what we eat, we are how we move, and we are how or what we think. That was my sort of mantra. But listening to you and going through the book made me think that there's just one. We are our genes. That's the biggest legacy that we carry, and everything else sort of has to be wired to that. Right? So I'm just trying to understand. So say I have a family history. You're talking about a human history. That's a different ballgame altogether. See, I have family history of having blood pressure, diabetes, and thyroid that runs in the family. Or say my uncles and my grandparents had heart attacks, etc. Am I just doomed then? Am I to conclude that I'm doomed? This is gonna come to me some way or the other.
That's a great question. Look, many times people think that, if this disease runs in my family, I'm going to get it eventually. We think that disease is passed on from our parents to us. But why don't we think that the lifestyle is also passed on from your parents to you? You are most likely eating what your parents were eating, or what your
really.
grandparents were eating.
Yeah, I think this generation is different. I think millennials are different. Or at least they changed in the past 2 decades, let's put it like that.
I would beg to differ, because if you look at the recent ICMR study that came out just a few months ago, that study pointed out that 60 to 70% of our calories are still coming from carbohydrates, right? Now that form of carbohydrate might have changed, and by the way, it has changed for worse, not for good, because our ancestors were having grains that were less polished, less hybridized, and they contained less starch in them. And now we are consuming grains which were hybridized during the Green Revolution in the 1970s, and that massively changed this grain, and now it contains much more starch. And when you eat roti, rice, or bread, it actually is same as eating sugar, because it spikes your blood sugar, and then your body has to release, your pancreas have to release insulin to manage all of that. So So, we might think that our diets have changed, but actually they have not. It may not be coming from roti, it might be coming from pizza or any other fast food or any other packaged food, but still 60 to 70% of our calories today are coming from carbohydrates, which, by the way, are the most insulinogenic food out there. And you talked about all these different conditions. If there is one thing that I want everyone to take away is that all of these metabolic conditions, whether it's diabetes, whether it's fatty liver, obesity, to a large extent, your cardiovascular disease, they have one single dysfunction. There is one single common denominator that all of these metabolic disorders have, and that's insulin resistance. It is unfortunately a not very well known disorder, but it is one of the most common disorders that exist in our country.
Right. I'm just going to pause you over there because you and I understand what insulin resistance is.
Right.
A lot of people watching might not. Could you explain in simple terms to say my grandmom?
Yeah, of course.
And also my,
Yeah, of course.
15-year-old nephew on what exactly is insulin resistance?
Absolutely, we'd love to do that. But let me just preface by saying this, that there is a study that I've cited in the book that has found that 1 in 3 adults in India has insulin resistance. So if you are out there watching this and thinking, hey, this is not relevant to me, the odds are actually against you, and there is a pretty good chance that you might be insulin resistant and you don't know it.
And it goes across gender?
Absolutely.
Okay.
90% of the people who have insulin resistance don't know that they have insulin resistance because it is asymptomatic. So if you think, and if you're just about to tune out thinking that, hey, I don't have insulin resistance, stop, because the statistics are against you, first of all, right? Now, to answer your question, what is insulin resistance? Look, before we talk about insulin resistance, we must talk about insulin, because people think insulin is a medicine or a drug that a diabetic takes, which is true, by the way. But insulin is actually a hormone that is produced by your pancreas. It's an organ that is tucked right behind your stomach, and it is there for a very good reason. So insulin is a hormone, right? First of all. This hormone is a super hormone. It does multiple things in your body, but one of its most famous function is to lower the blood sugar in your body. Why? Because high blood sugar levels in our bloodstream or low blood sugar levels in our bloodstream is actually very dangerous. High blood sugar can be toxic. Low blood sugar can cause seizures, can actually, if it goes too low, you can go into coma. So our body works really, really, really hard to maintain our blood sugar levels in a very narrow range. And it has a very sophisticated system to do that. Now, usually what's the trigger for the insulin to come out? It's blood sugar, right? So whenever we eat carbohydrates, our blood sugar starts to rise. Now, our body is trying really hard to keep the blood sugar in a very narrow range.
Very important point. He did not say when you eat sugar. He said when you eat carbohydrates is when your sugar spikes.
100%.
Just underlining that. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, thank you for underlining, because a lot of people think, hey, I've given up sugar and I'm fine. That's
हम चीनी नहीं खाते. हमारे घर में शक्कर मैं फीकी चाय पीता हूँ.
That is, as far away from truth
reality
as possible,
and
right?
truth
So
as can be.
I'm going to repeat again to underline. Whenever you eat carbohydrates, whatever carbohydrates they are, even if you think they are, a whole wheat or
quinoa, which by the way has more carbs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or zero maida bread or whatever, right? These all are carbohydrates, right? If Earth grows it, it is a carbohydrate. Even plants are carbohydrates. Okay, that doesn't mean that you need to give up all of them, but you need to understand, what carbohydrates are. If Earth grows it, it is a carbohydrate. Now, whenever we eat carbohydrates, our blood sugar levels, they start to go up. Our pancreas sense that the blood sugar is going up. It releases insulin to bring the blood sugar levels down. Now, how does insulin bring our blood sugar levels down? What insulin does is it's a facilitator. It would basically go to our tissues, and mainly that's muscle tissue, our skeletal muscle, and our fat cells. And it will knock on the doors of our muscle tissue and fat cells, and it will say, hey, we have excess blood sugar running in our bloodstream, which is very lethal for us. Can you please open the doors, and can these tissues, can you please absorb this blood sugar? Okay, that's what insulin does. Now, just so you know, our skeletal muscle is the biggest glucose sink in our body.
Glucose sink.
Glucose sink. 70% of the blood sugar of the glucose running in the bloodstream is absorbed by our skeletal muscle, which is a good thing, by the way. Huh? It's a disposal system.
Okay.
So glucose will go. The insulin will go to the skeletal muscle or fat cells, and it will open the doors, and these tissues will absorb the running glucose, and the glucose will come down. Okay. once insulin has done its job, it is supposed to also come down. Now, what happens is, and by the way, what these tissues do with the glucose is that they either convert it into energy that you can use for walking, for exercising, for whatever purpose,
store it as fat.
or they will store it, right? Well, muscles will store it as a glycogen stores, fat will store it as a fat, right? But basically stored energy for future use, right? Now, so that's what insulin does. Now that we understand that, let's talk about insulin resistance. We unfortunately live in an environment where our insulin levels are chronically elevated. Insulin is supposed to do its job and then come down. That's the natural mechanism.
But it's in this hyperactive
Yes.
mode constantly.
And that's called hyperinsulinemia. Why? Let me give you an example. We get up in the morning, we will have a breakfast. Typically that breakfast would contain a poha or a idli or dosa or paratha, which is basically 70-80% carbs, refined carbs by the way. So the moment you eat that, your blood sugar levels goes up. The pancreas have to release insulin. The insulin kicks in to get rid of the blood sugar. Typically, it takes about two hours for a normal person to blood sugar levels to come down. Insulin will make sure that it stays out there for a little bit longer because it wants to make sure that all glucose is gone, right? So it's roughly 2 to 3 hours that your insulin levels are now elevated. Now we are into mid-morning and it's our tea time. And that tea will typically come with biscuits or rusk and most definitely for most people with sugar. So now we have again put more glucose in our body. Insulin hasn't even had the chance to come down, but now we have put more glucose and now insulin has to not only stay up, but
it was just about to go rest, and now you've made it active again.
Exactly. Not only active, it has to now, pancreas have to now release even more insulin, right? Now, insulin is elevated for another 2 hours, and now we are into lunchtime. For most people, lunch looks like rajma chawal or curry chawal or whatever, you know, and again, 70 to 80% carbs. So again, our glucose levels go up. Insulin is still high. It is even higher now. 2 hours later, it's evening snack time, and for most people, snack is a samosa or Maggi or whatever, which is again pure glucose for your body. And you know, so all these things you might think that they are food, but when they are digested, your body treats it like sugar. You know, it's same as eating sugar. Now you're in the evening and your insulin levels are still elevated. Then comes dinner, and for most people, dinner is chapati with some dal and paneer, so you get some protein. But again, chapati, rice, it's predominantly carbohydrate based. So your insulin throughout the day never had the chance to come down, and now your last meal of the day, and most people also have a dessert after that, which is sweet. So you have spiked it even further. Now you're going to bed with an elevated level of super high level of insulin. So basically, you have been in a hyper insulinemic state throughout the day. And then we do this day after day after day after day. This high insulin is what causes insulin resistance. Because our tissues only have a limited capacity to store glucose. After a certain point of time, they're going to say, boss, enough. Now we can't take more. Fat cell will say, look, fat cell has a remarkable ability to grow 100 times its size. It's like a water balloon. But if you keep pushing it, it's going to burst at some point, right? Now, if it bursts, it's really bad. It's going to send all the inflammatory signals in your body. It doesn't want to burst. It wants to preserve itself. And the way it preserves itself, and it's again a self-defense mechanism, beautifully designed body self-defense mechanism, that these tissues make themselves resistant to insulin. So now insulin is knocking on the door.
This is insulin coming and saying, hello, I've got more supply, and they're saying, no more.
No more.
I can't take it anymore.
Exactly.
Then what happens?
So then you become insulin resistant. And this single dysfunction is...
Then where is all that sugar and starch going?
Your blood sugar level, it stays in your blood sugar, which is toxic. But by the way, this is not a 1 day, 2 day phenomena. This entire progression takes anywhere from 10 to 15 years. Your body is really, really smart. And what it does is, for the first 5 years, it is going to compensate the effects of insulin resistance. How? By producing more insulin. So now your pancreas will sense, hey, I'm producing insulin, but these tissues are not absorbing them. Something is wrong. Let me produce more insulin.
More, yeah.
So now you
You said 5 years.
5 to 10 years. That's why this is asymptomatic for a very long period of time. Let me walk you through the entire progression. It will become much clearer. So for the first 5 to 10 years, your pancreas will compensate by producing more insulin, and it works, by the way. It works for the first 5 years or so, and it takes care of the glucose because now
it's knocking harder.
It's knocking harder.
Yeah.
It's sending more, bouncers to the door, trying to force the door open, and it works for a while.
Yeah.
But then eventually, after 10 years or so, your body has had a lot of abuse, and that is when even the excess amount of insulin is not going to work. And your pancreas have been working so hard for the last 10 years or so, and that is when your beta cells will start to get exhaust. And once your beta cells die, they die basically. And that is when what will happen is that the insulin in your body will not be able to take care of the excess glucose, and that's when the glucose levels will start going up in your body. For the first 10 years, you are going for your annual checkup. Your doctor is checking for your blood sugar levels. They will be absolutely normal because your blood sugar levels.
But it's in the making.
Yes. What in the first 10 years, you will find that your insulin levels are high, but because of that overcompensation of pancreas, your blood glucose levels are still maintained. Now, around 10-year time frame, and look,
So what's the way to judge it? Like, what's the way to
I'll get to
test?
that. I'll get to that.
Yeah.
But let me very quickly finish this because I think it's important people understand the progression of this. For the first 10 years, you're getting blood sugar tested. You're testing for HbA1c. They both are normal, but your insulin levels are elevated. But hey, no one is actually checking for that, right? Now, after 10 years, your pancreas are now exhausted. And basically now that excess insulin production is not working. And this is when slowly your glucose levels will start creeping up. Now, one fine day you go to your doctor for a regular checkup and they will test and your blood sugar levels will be above 100 milligrams per deciliter, let's say 105. And they will say, hey, you know what, you are pre-diabetic now. And you should eat less, move more. And that advice has never worked for anyone ever. You go back and you keep doing what you're doing. And then 5 years later, you come back to your doctor and then they do your annual checkup and then they find that your blood glucose levels are now above 126 or above 125.
You're
now
officially a diabetic.
What they missed was that 15 years of prevention time, diagnosis time, where they could have prevented the progression of this disease. And by the way, once you are diabetic, your chances for heart disease are like 3 times higher. Basically your overall health is impacted by that.
Yeah. Okay, I want to pause here because I think we've got into a lot of detail of how insulin works, and truly it is a chapter. It calls for another podcast that we will do. But I want to get into understanding that we are also, while all this health information is around us, we also are the GLP-1 era people.
Yes.
We are fortunate, or depends on how you look at it actually, to be in times when some marvelous sort of medical inventions are taking place. Pharma invention, the industry at least says that GLP-1 is a miracle drug. It's changing lifestyles, it's changing people, etc. I have some reservations on the depth of data that we have on GLP-1, but would you say that GLP-1 solves this problem a little bit?
Yeah. Look, my view on GLP-1 is not coming as a practitioner, it's coming from as a researcher. And I've done extensive research in writing this book. There are more than 300 different studies and researches that I've cited in this book. And so my view on GLP-1 is coming purely from the research that I've seen. And the research that I've seen, it tells me that it depends who is taking GLP-1. If you are obese.
Clinically obese, not in your head.
Yes. If you're clinically obese, taking GLP-1 is net positive for those people.
Yeah.
Simply because the side effects of being obese are much more worse.
Boomerang into other things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think if someone is clinically obese, then it's a net positive for them. But otherwise, you should know that research points that there are a lot of shortcomings of GLP-1. There was research that was done which found that 40% of the weight that is lost through GLP-1 is actually the muscle mass that is lost.
Correct.
Right? So let's take an example. If you lose 10 kgs having Ozempic or whatever GLP-1 medicine that you take, out of the 10 kg, 4 kg is going to be the muscle loss. You don't want muscle loss. You want fat loss. So basically 40% of the weight loss.
But I hear now that there are new generation GLP-1s in the work that will not lead to muscle loss.
Right.
And those are in the works as
Yeah.
well. So we are really like sort of scratching the surface when it
Yeah.
comes to GLP-1, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's true. I mean, I think there's a lot of innovation still to come.
Yeah.
But if you look at what is available in the market today, especially
There are like
in the Indian
4
market.
in India now. There is Your Peak, there is Ozempic, there is Manjaro and Wegovy.
Yeah,
4 officially
there are
available.
still that class of drugs which cause a massive muscle loss. Now, there is another study that I have cited, which I've seen, is that roughly 90%, roughly 50% of the people who take these drugs, they stop taking these drugs after 12 months, and roughly 90% of them stop taking it after 2 years. And when you stop taking this drug, and you put that weight back on, remember one thing: the weight that you're going to put back on is not going to be the muscle mass; it's actually going to be fat mass.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's going to be you're going to be in a much worse position because you lost all that precious muscle mass, which, by the way, is extremely important for keeping you insulin sensitive and for your aging and for everything else in your in your body. And now you have more fat mass once you stop taking it. That doesn't mean that everyone will regain fat. You can, of course, if you adapt your lifestyle.
People are going to say that, listen, I'm going to have a diabetes medicine all my life. I'm going to have a BP medicine all my life. Let me have GLP-1 all my life.
Yeah.
Right? There are so many people who say that.
Yeah. Look, GLP-1s, they were initially invented to cure diabetes, right?
Yeah.
And, they saw that as a side effect, people were eating less and, they were losing weight, but actually they were primarily designed as a diabetic drug. So they're very effective at doing that. And that's why I'm saying, if you have a clinical condition like obesity or diabetes, I think it's net positive because those conditions have far more, far-reaching worse effects than what you would get as a side effect of GLP-1. So if you are one of those people, then I think it's net positive. Otherwise, not. But even if you take these drugs, keep in mind at some point of time you're going to stop taking these drugs, and at that point of time, more likely than not, you're going to regain the weight, and the weight that you regain, unless you manage it through the proper lifestyle, unless you increase your protein consumption, unless you strength train, you are going to gain the weight back, and that weight most likely would not be muscle mass, that would be pure fat mass.
And I just want to underline, doctor after doctor, health coach after health coach tells you the same thing. But how many people are listening? That's the troubling part. But there are so many other fascinating sort of things that are mentioned in this book. And people should read it if you care about your health. But I do want you to end this segment by giving us 3 things which ordinary citizens can do, which me, my camera person, my producer, everybody can do despite having a really crazy life. Where I'm not somebody who can spend hours in the gym. I'm not someone who can dedicate their lives into looking a particular way. I'm also not a sports star, so I don't have a battery of people taking care of what I eat, how much I sleep and all of that. Are there 3 easy ways
100%
in which I can ensure that I'm giving back to my body?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked this, because if you would have ended this this show here, then your audience would have thought that I'm all doom and gloom. It is. I'm not all doom and gloom. Actually, there is definitely things that you can do to actually not just improve your health, but if you find yourself in any of these with any of these metabolic syndromes, you can absolutely reverse it. You will not be able to reverse it with medicines. You can only reverse it through lifestyle changes. And I have an entire part of my book dedicated towards this. It's filled with protocols, and maybe to keep it short, the way I explain it in my book
top 3 for you.
Yes, top 3. I'll focus on 3. Actually, in my book, that's how I've also designed it. I call it a big rocks principle. Choose your big rocks and spend most of your time fixing those big rocks, and don't worry about the small rocks and sand. They will fall into place. And there are 3 big rocks actually in my book. So that's nutrition, your movement, which activity, exercise, and managing your sleep and stress. And these 3 have a meaningful impact on your metabolic health, simply because of the frequency. We eat anywhere from 2 to 6 times in a day. All of us sleep every night, and we are walking and doing some activity throughout the day, right? So the frequency of these things is too high, and secondly, they have a direct impact on your insulin sensitivity. So these 3 things are my top things. I can briefly talk about them. Look, nutrition is extremely important, and that is where, if you want to start your journey of healing, or if you want to just stay metabolically healthy throughout your life, I think nutrition is where you should start. Simply because it has the most direct impact on keeping you
Simply put, it's not just the quantity of food that you're eating, which portion control is what India is big on, but it's all the quality of the products that you are consuming.
Don't count your calories, make your calories count, is what I say. There is this whole myth, and that's for another time. People are obsessed about counting calories. And we've been counting calories for the last 40-50 years, but look where it has led us. We are more obese than ever, and we are going to continue to get more obese than ever if nothing changes. So it's not about counting calories, it's about making your calories count. That's what I truly believe, and that's what I have also prescribed in my book. To keep it short, I have a very simple rule when it comes to nutrition. And if you follow that, you can deep dive in the book. But if you follow this simple rule, you will get it mostly right. There are three macronutrients when it comes to food: carbohydrates, fats, and protein. Okay, anything that grows on earth is a carbohydrate. So your fruits, vegetables, legumes, grains, anything. So that category is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the most insulinogenic food. The moment you consume them, and of course there is a range, it varies. For example, on one end, vegetables will have very negligible impact on your blood glucose levels. On the other hand, these processed grains will have a massive impact.
Yeah.
And then you have packaged carbohydrates like chips and cookies, and they will have an even extreme impact. So these are the most insulinogenic food. What that means is that as you consume them, they're rapidly converted into glucose, and your body has to dump a lot of insulin to take care of them, right? So when it comes to carbohydrates, I have my philosophy is that you control your carbohydrates. Then fats, they cause zero blood sugar spike, and your body doesn't need to produce any insulin because they don't cause any glucose spike. We unfortunately find ourselves in a world where eating fat has been shamed for the last 30-40 years. We've been living in this fat phobia, which is absolutely unfounded. There is latest research which says that all the research around saturated fats and fats being bad is proven wrong now, and it has actually caused much more damage than it has helped. So don't fear fats is my second rule. Incorporate good fats in your diet. They are actually very essential, because if you're going to cut down on carbohydrates, you need an alternate fuel source, and our body has only two fuel sources: glucose or fats. So you must incorporate healthy fats in your body. And then protein. Prioritize protein. That's the third rule of nutrition. Protein is your building block, and if your diet mainly consists of good fats and protein, then you will not feel the urge to binge on processed carbohydrates.
Right.
So to sum it up, control your carbs, don't fear fats, prioritize protein.
You missed fiber.
Fiber is a carbohydrate, and it's a carbohydrate. It's not a
I think
separate.
Indians have a chronic problem of not taking enough fiber.
Well, I have a very different view on fiber, and that
Okay.
maybe is a whole different conversation.
Okay. But in a glimpse,
Look, actually, let me give you, because
we've been popping ESOP gold for generations because we simply do not have enough
Okay.
fiber to get our bowel movement right.
I know this is going to be controversial, but since you asked me this question, now I have to answer it, right? So take inspiration from nature. If you look at nature and how nature produces food, you will find there are two combinations. One is that in nature, carbohydrates are always come with fiber,
Yeah.
and protein always comes with fat. You look at, that's how nature produces food. You look at any natural food. You look at fruits. Fruits, they contain a lot of sugar, but they come with the fiber. Look at vegetables, they come with a lot of fiber. You look at legumes, you look at grains. That's a different thing, that now we process our grains to death. But they in nature they come built with fiber. Simple reason being because fiber is a built-in brake to manage the sugar that is there in those carbohydrates. And in nature, protein will always come with fats. You look at animal meat, you look at dairy, you look at any natural protein source.
Anything for that matter.
Yeah, which is dairy, right? You look at avocados for that matter. So any
What's
natural.
the controversial bit here?
The controversial bit is that people think they need to eat a lot of fiber. You need fiber if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates. Because that's how nature designed food to be. We have processed food to death now, and it is not in its natural form. That's why we need to take fiber supplements. But if you eat whole food as nature intended, you actually don't need fiber. You need because you need fiber only if you are overeating on carbohydrates. And in nature, mostly carbohydrates come with fiber. But we are so far away from how nature has given us food. We have processed it so much that we strip away all the fiber from that carbohydrates, and basically what we eat is pure glucose.
Right.
So,
Okay then.
but to
All
come back
right.
and to wrap
Yes.
up, so that's nutrition.
Yeah.
Activity is my second pillar.
Huh.
Extremely important. Like I said in the beginning, your muscles are the biggest glucose sink. If you put them to work, they can do wonders. I have multiple protocols, or not multiple. I have 4 protocols on how to be efficient with your activity or exercise. But if there is one thing that I want everyone to take away, is that, which I think from anywhere from a 20-year-old to a 60-year-old can do, is do a 20-minute walk after you eat. It will have a massive impact, positive impact on your health, on maintaining
After every meal,
after
20
every
minutes.
meal.
Yeah.
In making you more insulin sensitive, simply
Yeah.
because, especially if your meal consumes carbohydrate, blood sugar is going to go up. If you go for a 20-minute walk, you will put your muscles to use, and those muscles will have greater capacity to absorb the glucose that is running in your. And I've tested this on my CGM multiple times,
Yeah.
and it usually brings my blood sugar down by about 20%. Same meal, by the way. So if there's one thing that I think anyone can take away and
And when
anyone
you
can
say
do.
walk, I just want to clarify, it doesn't mean that you have to go on a very brisk walk. It just means even if you're just moving your body,
100%.
you're doing some chores in the house, or you decide to take that next call after lunch, walking.
Yeah.
If you just plan to do it, that's also good enough. It doesn't
Yes.
have to be a very brisk.
Yes.
Actually, it should not be a very brisk thing after
Yeah.
food. Third one then.
Yeah, third one. But can I just say one more thing
Yeah.
about activity? This is bare minimum in my opinion. Walk. If you want to really optimize your health, then the research says that strength training, adding strength training to your routine,
Must.
is
Across ages.
absolutely across ages. By the way, actually, as you get older, it gets even more important because every decade you lose a lot of muscle mass. So to retain that muscle mass, strength training is really important. And the beauty of strength training is that you are not only depleting the glycogen stores, which means that they can absorb more glucose, but you are building more muscle, which means now you have a bigger disposal system, a bigger
Yeah.
sink.
Yeah.
So if you want to optimize, then please incorporate 3 to 4 sessions of strength training throughout the week. That's
Got
the
it.
activity.
And the third one.
Third one and the last one is managing your stress and sleep. Stress has a very meaningful impact on your insulin sensitivity, simply because that's how nature designed us. Stress was a defense mechanism for us, and we were never, centuries ago, we were never in a chronically elevated stress levels. We used to have stress that were acute for a reason. For example, you find a lion in front of you, and your body now needs to give you energy, so your cortisol will go up, which will push your glucose up so that you can run away from the lion. Unfortunately, now we don't face lion, but we find ourselves, we find ourselves in a stressful environment, whether it's at home or office or traffic. So we are chronically stressed. What that means is that our cortisol levels are chronically high. Now, if your cortisol levels are chronically high, cortisol directly opposes the effects of insulin. Insulin wants to bring the blood sugar down. Cortisol wants to bring the blood sugar up. So if you're chronically stressed, there is a very high chance you're going to develop insulin resistance.
Yeah.
I have a full protocol in my book. I will not go through that right now.
Yeah.
But one of the most important and clear way to manage stress is through sleep. And sleep is our natural cycle to manage, these hormones. When we typically get up in the morning, our cortisol levels go up, and they are at the peak in the morning. Then they start to decline throughout the day. In the evening, the cortisol levels are at its lowest before we sleep, and then that's when our melatonin levels start to go up, and they stay up throughout the night, and they start to come down. This is a very nice, delicate dance of our hormones. When our sleep cycle is disrupted, it has a deep impact on our insulin sensitivity. There's a research that I've used in the book which says that one night of bad sleep makes you 30% less insulin sensitive the next day. That's the level of impact.
Yeah.
And like I said, sleep is a great way to also reset from your stress. So focus on maintaining your stress and sleep, and there are protocols for that in the book.
Yeah, and before you think that kitna manage kare, sleep bhi manage kare, nutrition bhi manage kare, resistance training bhi manage kare, well, it isn't actually that complicated. It's just that we are in middle of so much information and, frankly, to say misinformation about health, that when you read the right product, you actually understand that there are simple things and simple first principles to follow even when it comes to health. For now, that's the book. Sick Nation, I've got my notes on, so get yours as well. And Karan is here to take any questions. You can leave them in the comments. We'll see what we can do about it. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.